So that we will see a lot of specialization in law even further. So like these full service law firms, they will have departments very specialized, and boutique firms are going to be the future, because with the democratized legal tech, etc., they can just service customers much better than they could 10 years ago.
Will AI replace lawyers? I know you've said before that smart associates who embrace AI will become partners much faster, right?
Will they become obsolete? No, I don't think so. But will their work look completely different? Yes. Will the work for associates all the way up to managing associates look different? Absolutely yes.
What do you think on agentic AI is changing your industry, and how is it getting implemented?
Law is very often also driven about emotions, like risks that you don't want to take, or if you're selling your company that you've built up for the last 20 years. I mean, there's a lot of emotion going on.
Welcome to the Tech Foresight podcast. This is a podcast where we are diving deep into how technology is shaping the industries and our future. I am your host, Diana Daniels. I am working in telecom, blockchain, and digital inclusion. And in each episode, we are exploring real-world applications from emerging technologies, not just the theories, but the actual shifts that are happening in industries that will define how the future is looking like. Today, we will talk about a fascinating and very relevant topic, which is the future of legal work. What is going to happen with the lawyers, and how is technology transforming them? For decades now, legal work has been known for this very time-consuming, complex, and very costly work. But AI is changing completely that environment. What once took months can be now done in hours. Legal due diligence, contracts, compliance, red flags, reporting, and all of that is being automated, accelerated, and redefined. And joining me today is Rick Reness. He is the CEO and co-founder of Ina Legal, a company that is at the very forefront of the legal tech innovation. Rick is a very seasoned entrepreneur with deep expertise in AI, enterprise service as a software as a service, and financial markets as well. He actually scaled the Chat Layer AI to an acquisition and later led the global AI and social app teams at Sinch Engage. Rick, welcome to the Tech Foresight podcast.
Thank you so much, Diana, for having me.
I would like to start a bit of this conversation with the recent advancements in the artificial intelligence, Rick. Very particular in the rise of the generative AI, where it has had a significantly very big impact in various industries, not only on your industry. And if I look back, like, for instance, the accounting and finance that we give it as a given today, but we've seen this transformation, that is happening in the legal tech past before. If we think about, like, maybe in the past 10 years, we have seen companies using algorithms and actually AI-driven predictive analytics that have changed how companies are forecasting either the cash flows or managing the financial risk. The accounting systems are completely automated. I guess that everybody is doing from document validation to compliance checks with these big systems. And I actually found an article on Forbes that talks about that impact on the workforce. And what I saw is that between 2019 to 2021, the United States, they saw 300,000 accountants and auditors that they left their jobs. That is almost 16% drop of labor in just 2 years. And big part of that is because AI is handling these repetitive tasks like bookkeeping, payroll, and they are shifting these accountants. So that is in the accountant world, And if I think about these repetitive tasks, like the same things that they happen probably in the legal work, do you think that we are in this same inflection point in the legal industry, given, this progression from the basic text recognition to sophisticated analysis? What do you think? Is AI redefining the legal profession? Are we on the brink to have only AI-driven guys? What is it?
So actually, it's very funny that you bring this up, and also these statistics. I've been in the SaaS industry now for 10 years. I have a finance background. I used to work in capital markets, but of course, capital markets, they need to get accounted for. But when I 10 years ago started, there was this huge digitization going on in the accountancy world. And the underlying technology for that was OCR, so optical character recognition.
Yeah.
And that technology works really well on a structured document, like an invoice, for instance, or a bill you get in a restaurant. However, it doesn't work that well for documents or any other type of content that is unstructured.
Okay.
And that's exactly where these large language models excel at. So the way I look at it is about 2 years ago, when ChatGPT came out and all the variants that you have on the different players, basically the enabling technology is now there. And as you mentioned, I had a AI company 6 years ago. We were at the forefront of that.
Yeah.
Big challenge back then was the training of the models. Right? It took 30, 35 times of example data to train a model. Now with large language models, this is, for a large part gone away. So if you look at that comparison, I do believe that for legal, which is very much, the interpretation of language, we now have the underlying technology to have a similar revolution than that we have seen in the accountancy space.
Wow. You see, if I make a little bit of history on my own here, I remember I was leading the acquisition of a telecom provider in Mexico about 20 years ago. We bought this company because of their fiber optic assets. And oh my gosh, the due diligence process, it was pure torture. I had teams in both, the finance team and the legal team and parts of the sales team working almost 24/7 in that company, in their office for entire weeks. There were documents stuck everywhere. The lawyers were cross-referencing every single contract manually. And then every financial statement, all the guys were trying to carve, the line by line. It felt truly like running the Boston Marathon in high heels. A total endurance challenge rather than a business process. And if we fast forward that today, we are in this world where AI-powered legal platform, in theory, will reduce this diligence time by 80%. And my question for you here is, are we removing the risk of being a person made and then shifting it to AI? Who's going to be responsible if there's a bad decision making in this scale?
It's a very interesting question, and that's a question that I always need to answer on a daily basis. So I think very important, there's almost always two parties, sometimes three, that take the risk in an M&A process. It's typically the buyer, so ultimately the company who's going to buy the company, or it could also be an individual that buys the company. Very often it are investors, private equity.
Yes.
It could be VC, but typically they come in earlier. So they're one of the risk takers, or one of the accountable people in taking the risk. Then they try to bring that risk partially to lawyers by doing due diligence, because based on the due diligence, the lawyers give a sort of an insurance that they have checked for certain things. And then a relatively new trend is W&I insurances, so warranty and indemnification insurers. So everything that could pop up that hasn't been reviewed completely, or some things that have specifically been reviewed, they can be insured. So that's a bit how it goes today.
Okay.
But as with any insurance, you can give a much better quote, or you can manage a risk much better if you have a lot of data points about what is going on. And if you want to have data points consistently, you need to have a standardized process, and because that can guarantee a quality of the process. So that's always the argument that we make. Like, look, we're going to really focus on that process so that it's repeatable, that it's accurate. And then the question is, okay, can we reduce the risk overall compared to how the process goes today? But the reality is today, there is still somebody taking the risk. And typically it's either the investor or partially the law firm if they use our tool.
Wow. All right. So then we need to address the elephant in the room. Will AI replace lawyers? I know you've said before that smart associates who embrace AI will become partners much faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
but why is that? Why is that? Is a competitive advantage that for those who adapt, or do you think that firms will enforce AI adoption at a scale?
So will a lawyer become obsolete? So frankly, I don't think so. But what we should also realize is that there are, a lot of different type of lawyers. A lawyer that litigates in civil law, for instance, is a very different type of lawyer than one who negotiates commercial contracts on behalf of a company. And it's also a different lawyer than a lawyer that both does the commercial negotiations, but also actually goes to court with you if something would pop up with the contract. So I think it's probably for the outside world. I mean, all lawyers are the same, but in reality, they are not. And the ones that we focus on are really these commercial lawyers that might also go, into court if something would go wrong with the transaction in a couple of years from the transaction. But those are the ones that we focus on. Um, and will they become obsolete? No, I don't think so. But will their work look completely different? Yes. Will the work for associates all the way up to managing associates look different? Absolutely yes. And I can dive a little bit deeper in this podcast if you want into how I believe that will look like.
Yeah, I guess it will be really interesting because do you think that, guys that are just finishing law school that usually enter into these entry level jobs that are taking over from AI, what are they going to do? And what are the risks?
Yes. Um, so first of all, if you look, for instance, at due diligence, it is very often work that's being done by junior associates all the way up to managing associates that do a lot of the review work. What I truly believe, and that's a separate topic, right now, well, historically, a law firm was built around the business model of a billable hour. So the amount of hours that you would work on something, you would bill it to your customer, and that's the source of income. But what we're seeing with innovative law firms right now that are commercially savvy, they're going more to an outcome or result-based approach. So these new associates that come into this world, instead of them being asked, like, perform as much hours as you can and have an argument to bill for that, they actually get an additional challenge on top. They say, give me excellent legal work, but also do it efficiently because that can actually, reinforce our business model. We can actually make more money if we do the same quality of work faster. So that's going to be, I think, a very important thing. That's going to be a huge topic in law firms the next 5 to 10 years. Some are early to adopt, some are slower to adopt, but I do believe it's a trend that is, undeniable, and that will become more and more full into force, especially in commercial law. So the game changes. Another thing that happens is that associates, of course, they would specialize in something, but they would do a lot of, different types of works that were repetitive. If the repetitive work can be done by AI, it actually really helps you to make a career if you specialize early on, because that's the differentiator. So that's something that we will see. And then last, but certainly not least, client relationships. Very, very important. If I engage a law firm and, with my business, of course, also in the industry that I am, I engage with a lot of law firms. I'm not particularly interested in, the perfect contract or, templates that they come up with. But I'm interested in the specific advice that they have for me as a CEO of this legal tech company, which is a very, very different approach. I'm happy to pay, a certain amount for an outcome that is almost like creative for my situation, instead of just getting like a template that is really well, organized from a legal perspective that might be, only limited applicable to my business, or even my personal situation as a CEO that I need, or what I find important. So those are all the things that will evolve. First of all, so I'm going to repeat it, like they need to do work faster and more efficient, and they can do it with technology. They can specialize on a certain topic because they have to spend less time on doing repetitive work. And then last but not least, it's the client intimacy that they really can focus on because of that.
And I want to rescue something that you mentioned over there that is about how with the efficiency that is working, then how the billable hours is changing, right? This has to work. I don't know if the market sense of the way that lawyers are billing us customers today, it will make sense more tomorrow because, usually it's per hour. So traditionally, the law firms charge based on the time spent. But if they're spending less time in doing quality work for us, it has to change. So what is that you see already? What is that shift? Moving towards either the pricing flat fees, or what do you think that it's going to happen? And let's going to think in the next 5 years. So I won't take you yet to the 10 years, but let's going to think in the next 5 years how these billable hours are going to change in the industry.
Yeah. This is my personal view, and I think some will agree with it, some will disagree with it. But I mean, the tendency is definitely there that we move from the billable hour to a performance-based fee or a fixed cost project. How will that change? I think in reality, law to a certain degree is very competitive. Yes, you have a bit of a monopoly based on the jurisdiction that you specialize in and the topic that you specialize in, but especially in commercial law and also in M&A, it's quite competitive, that space. So the way that you can differentiate is typically in terms of client relationships, because in a jurisdiction there are just quite some lawyers that can help you, and some maybe do a little bit more qualitative work than others, etc. But it's very difficult to assess that if you go to them for the first time. So what I do see is that with technology like this that we are producing with NL Legal, more and more lawyers will feel comfortable by just giving a quote. Very often what you also see, I mean, again, I make the parallel with accountancy, audit, etc., is that they say, look, this is what it's going to cost. And then they just improve the margin profile based on how efficient they can work. And I really believe that that's the future. The law firms will adapt. It might take a bit slower, but the market demand will push for that for sure.
So you think that the traditional law firms are completely at risk, a big risk of being outcompeted by more tech-driven alternatives, and what other new entrants do you see in the market?
So for me, it's enablement technology, but then your business model also needs to change. I mean, if I get a strategy proposal from one of the big 4 or big 8, it's not uncommon to see like, look, for this analysis we've used this tool and it's on my invoice as well. If the quality of the work goes up and the time spent of the work is more defensible, then me as a customer, I'm happy to pay for that technology. But it's going to be a challenge, of course, to adapt that business model and then really focus on the margins, because you only want to have that model if you can actually increase the margins on these type of projects. And I think that's where a lot of the discussion is about currently. How do we enable for that? And also, how do we make sure that we, as a law firm, don't take in all the risk of a scope that would increase and that we would still be tied to a fixed price. So this is the game.
But do you see that probably customers are embracing technology, or especially AI, a little bit faster? It's kind of like the guys are asking now ChatGPT doctor questions instead of going to the doctor. And then eventually, listen, I come from the telecom industry, right? And in the telecom industry, what happened to us in the voice over IP era, at the beginning was only the big telcos who could do voice over IP, and suddenly you had guys like Skype, or which, by the way, Skype is going away, or WhatsApp, doing also voice, and they were not even telcos. They didn't even have at that moment infrastructure, and now let these big monsters that they are. So, do you think that this could happen as well? There's these new entrants,
So I can only tell you what I'm currently seeing. We're a young startup. We're in this particular venture, we're not even 1 year underway. And remember again, typically the customers are the ones that take the risk that I mentioned earlier. So it's either the company who buys, it's the PE or the insurer.
Right.
What I see, where we see a lot of inbound traction coming from right now, is mainly from investors and also companies that do serial acquisitions. Because they're very interested in this technology because it's very costly to engage a law firm. And they have always in-house legal teams. So they're looking a little bit like, okay, how can we be more efficient with the means that we have? And then on the other hand, what I see, both large and boutique firms, they're really experimenting with this because they see this as well. So they're all a bit, looking at each other at the moment. But the reality is going to be that this technology is going to be adopted. It's just market force, right? One of the things that I've seen with AI in a specific field is also very interesting. So, for instance, DeepL, the translation software. DeepL, in the beginning, online, you could translate something. In the beginning, also used a lot by some innovative translating agencies.
Okay.
But also corporations started to use it internally because it was easy to translate things with AI. What I've seen there is that the companies that adapted early on and changed their business model, they're thriving right now because they exploited that model. They found a lot of new customers that they could initially not service, and their pie just grew. But then you have a whole long tail of translation agencies that were late in the game that resisted to adopt this technology. And you see that they have been pushed out of the market. So that's just 5 years ago. So I think that that's also something that a lot of firms should take into account. There might be certain fields in law that are much more protected, but there are also fields that are sensitive to this for sure.
So I see this kind of like a true democratization of legal work. And as you said, AI is allowing these smaller mid-market companies to help on this legal work, and especially in that segment where you and Emma are, which is in the M&A, due diligence, and that stuff. So my question to you is, what do you think that this is coming from? Where do you believe that eventually legal firms are going to be just smaller, and then the other spaces for these alternative service providers for legal work, or how do you see this ecosystem working?
I mean, I have here a picture behind me of a baseball player. It's Yogi Berra from the New York Yankees. And he had this famous saying, like, it's very hard to make predictions, especially about the future. But
this is what you look here now.
Yeah, let me look into my crystal ball, although I don't have it.
Okay.
I think there are two options. The first option, it's a bit the challenger option, as you mentioned, is that law firms might be endangered. They become smaller in terms of headcount because of a lot of automation. Could be.
Okay.
However, at the other side of the spectrum, what could also be real is that because of the automation, exactly like you mentioned, there is a bit of a democratization of legal services. If I look at the legal services market today, for a big part of the ecosystem or a big part of the companies, it's not available to them. It's just too expensive. They just take the risk. So I truly believe that we might get into a scenario where we actually grow the pie, where, I mean, more of these legal services, can be sold to more individual companies, which will all in all keep the total amount of lawyers and law firms relatively the same. But per lawyer, they could just serve much more companies or individuals. And again, I mean, I don't want to put too much parallels with the accountancy sector or the audit sector, but that's exactly what happened over there in the last 10 years. You saw the ones that were there, that they just service much more customers per accountant or per auditor. So this is a really interesting thing to take into account as well.
I really like this. So this actually reads perfectly in thinking on how skills are going to play here. And I would love to hear your take. What new skills do you think that, let's say, law students that are watching us today, this young professional, they should focus to stay competitive?
Yes, of course. But then the question is how? How do I stay competitive, right?
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, it's always good to experiment a lot with new technology, carve out time for that. I think is one of the biggest challenges that I see, because the billable hour model doesn't account for having free time to experiment with new technology. So I think the first advice I would give to any law firm that says, like, look, we have a strategic vision that we want to be a leader in a certain segment, in a certain size, I would say carve out a percentage of the time for your lawyers of all seniority levels on the scale to experiment with this technology, because the technology is here to stay, and those who embrace it will just have the high chance to succeed. So I think.
And would you say to experiment with technology is use gen models like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude or whatever? Just play with it.
Yeah, play with it, but you need to play with it in a way that makes sense. Just to play is just not a good way to do it. So basically, you need to say, this is the outcome that I'm going for, and which technology can happen, which business outcome do I want, and which is the technology that I can work with. And I truly believe it's verticalized solutions, and that's also what you see has been adopted by law firms. Either verticalized, like legal tech AI. We go one step further, where we say we do purely everything around data rooms and legal due diligence, so very verticalized. So we're in the legal tech vertical, and then in a specific use case vertical. And why is that? Because then you just get instant clarity about, can it solve my use case? If you're going to mess around with ChatGPT, you're going to have a lot of fun. And fun is also good, and you get like the basics of the technology. But it's very difficult if you have like 3, 4, 5% of your time allocated to experimentation to actually get a result out of that. So I would really say,
first one is that, right? Is play with AI. Second,
second, so play with AI. The second that I would say is really look at business outcomes. What do you want to get out of it, and then adapt the adapt the technology that you adopt, or the service provider that you adopt. But then client intimacy. I can't stretch this enough. This will make you differentiate. So develop those commercial skills. And when I say commercial skills, it's not about just purely that you can do a cold sell. No, it's also about understanding really what drives somebody. Also the emotions. I mean, law is very often also driven about emotions, like risks that you don't want to take, or if you're selling your company that you've built up for the last 20 years. I mean, there's a lot of emotion going on. So I think being able to handle with that as a lawyer is extremely, extremely powerful if you can bring this to customers.
I love this, because I guess that not many people really think about. And I know that we always talk about the soft skills, but mainly since January to date, I've been hearing Agentic AI everywhere, and we haven't spoke probably too much into this. but I don't see any agent AI having lots of feelings or emotions. What do you think on agentic AI is changing your industry, and how is it getting implemented?
So we're an agentic AI platform. That's really what we do in a very verticalized approach. So that's why I think, at the end of the day, especially in M&A process, is, two parties that come together and that they believe that they can make a deal that adds value to both parties, right? So it's a very human thing to do. So that's why I don't believe that we will be, the disruptor, where we basically let an AI take over the full legal work of a law firm. But it's there really for the law firm to focus on this value-added task, and that's exactly where this human play comes into being. But also like the deep expertise on, a certain type of company or a certain vertical industry. That's really what matters to a customer. So you can spend a lot more time on that.
So where in the legal area with Emma you are implementing agents today? What is that low hanging fruit where owners of firms or big corporations with a big legal team can think about to use, platforms like Emma?
So yeah, everything where you basically the data room, legal due diligence, all these type of use cases we support, and then we go all the way up to compliance, like checking, for instance, have suppliers signed off like certain provisions. And so, for instance, let's say that you are that you want to investigate to buy a clothing distribution company. Yes, you might be interested in, how they're financed, etc. But you're also interested for your reputational risk, like, okay, have all the suppliers undersigned a anti-slavery act, for instance, because that's something that we as a firm really stand for. That all the people in the value chain are employed in a very humane way. That's also something that we can help with.
Where were you when I booked that telco company 20 years ago? My gosh, crazy. All right. Well, we have arrived to one of my favorite sections of this Tech Foresight podcast, which is the 4 trends and 4 dreams. And I love this because leaders and entrepreneurs who train themselves to spot those early signs, or what we call as trends, are those ones that stay ahead, and those ones who actually adapt. They adapt early. They gain a competitive advantage. So here's the thing: we cannot be obviously reactive. I believe that in order to not only to predict the future, we need to build it. So that's why I love this section, because we stay in the present, and hopefully you will share with us 4 key trends that are actively shaping your industry right now, and then we will zoom out and you will tell us the 4 dreams that where your industry is going the next 20 years from now. So we're gonna keep it short, hopefully to one word or one phrase, and very straight to the point. Ready?
Ready.
Let's do this. Okay. So first trend in the digitization. What do you see?
Digitization in law is happening, and you need to embrace it, experiment with it today to stay relevant for the next 10 years.
Okay. Second trend, billing.
I truly believe as a customer, I want results if I engage a law firm. So think fundamentally about your business model and work on a result-based business model.
Okay. The third trend on legal teams. What do you see?
In specialization. So that we will see a lot of specialization in law even further. So like these full service law firms, they will have departments very specialized, and boutique firms are going to be the future, because with the democratized legal tech, etc., they can just service customers much better than they could 10 years ago.
Very cool. What will be a 4th trend that you see on your own? That I didn't mention.
So we are, we're an M&A legal tech company. And also there's another democratization effect, because, you mentioned the way that the company did due diligence. I bet it was a large company if they were able to fly in everybody. But what we see actually is that for smaller deals, you can follow the same standards as you would see typically with larger deals. M&A
Mm.
originally comes from, Wall Street. Let's face it, it came from Wall Street. But you see all these principles now rippling down to even smaller family companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with technology like ours, you can do that.
Mm.
And I think that's really, really cool because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that really have built their dreams, sometimes over generations. And at one moment they say, look, I've realized my dream. I think somebody else is needed to, make this dream bigger because I've done my part. And then they can hand it over. And even if your dream is, not listed on Wall Street, you can do that. So I think that that's a really cool trend.
I love it. And now let's dream bigger, and let's gonna see the picture of the world in 10 or 25 years from now. So your 4 dreams for the legal industry. Let's gonna think about your dream on regulation.
This is going to be super counterintuitive, but I live in Europe and I see, there's a lot of legal tech currently about, for instance, ESG is a good example, about, how can you make the ESG burden administratively lower? And I think it misses its effect completely. We should work on, on the ESG goals, but not
Yeah.
on the administrative part of it. So if I have one dream, I would say, a lot of law firms, they can make good money on good business advice, but it would be great if we would have simpler regulation in the EU, because then even companies like mine are not necessary for, companies that just want to do business. And I think that's very, very important. If not, everybody's welcome to try our technology out.
I like that dream totally. Okay, what about your dream on how will the legal work will be done in the next 20 years?
Oh, like my personal dream is, I know quite some associates, managing associates, junior associates, and the reality is they really need to work hard because the processes are not that digitized.
Yeah.
So, working on a deal, you said 24 hours a day working, but the reality is I know a lot of them that work 3-4 times a week until 2 a.m. In the morning on these type of things. It's just
Okay.
unhealthy and it's also unproductive. So it's a dream for me to, eradicate this, to get this out of the world so that they can also just spend an evening with family, friends, but still get the same quality work done.
I love that, like total work-life balance, harmony more than balance. What about then the dream of how the lawyers are going to be in 25 years from now?
And 25 years from now, wow.
This is 2050 already. Come on.
I'll tell you what is not my dream. I mean, 2 agentic AIs negotiating an NDA amongst each other. I mean, that's definitely not my dream. I mean, some are dreaming of that. It's not my dream. But I would see it really as a valued business advisor or strategy advisor, but then specialized in the legal component, instead of somebody who drafts a specific deliverable for me. So I really want to take them along on the strategic journey and let them advise me what is right for me with all their knowledge about law.
And what about that dream that is going to dominate this market?
Yeah, so the last dream that I have is it's linked to my personal dream. I started Emma Legal. It's in Emma. So Emma, the name is linked to M&A. That's where the name Emma comes from. It's a personification of M&A. So the last 3 years, the M&A market has been relatively modest because of the interest hike. So I really hope that this M&A market jumps off again, and that we can make a lot of the personal dreams of entrepreneurs that worked really hard, or families that worked really hard, a reality through an exit, or somebody else that continues their dream, because that will also help, of course, Emma Legal to be successful. But that's a personal one that I have.
I love this because it's very inspirational dreams that you have to share with us, and very action-driven trends that you also give us. So I would like to ask 2 final questions to you, Rick. If you could go back in time 20 years from now, before, what career advice would you give to your younger self?
you hear this a lot, but I do believe that curiosity and the willingness to learn is really a differentiator. So, a lot of people are worried about how much money they will make next year, but yes, of course, you should be able to finance certain things. But if you can prioritize between finance and curiosity and learning, always prioritize curiosity and learning, because in the end, that will compound the payoff that you'll get at the end of the journey. This is my number one.
This is your number one. And what about that advice that you will give, let's say, to that intern that is watching us today, doing a legal work intern? What would you tell him or tell her?
Oh, the billable hour is fine. And it's a part that you need to do probably today, but invest that extra time, or ask even your senior that you're able to invest that time to do exactly this curiosity and learning thing, because that's what's going to make you successful. That's going to increase your chances to become a really awesome partner or managing partner later on. I'm convinced about that. So dare to have that conversation.
I love this. Rick, thank you. These conversations have been very, very packed with insights. And I have my 3 takeaways that I have here, which is, first one is AI isn't replacing lawyers. They are making the lawyers more strategic. This is what I've learned with you. The second takeaway that I have is the billable hour. It's on a borrowed time. AI is accelerating this legal work, and firms need to rethink new revenue models. My third takeaway that I'm taking from this conversation is that lawyers who embrace AI or data, this is the lawyer. So this is the new type of workforce that will have the edge. The legal profession is evolving, and those who upskill beyond just the legal knowledge will actually lead the change. Did I get it right?
You're absolutely right, Diana.
Awesome. Well, before we close, I want to ask you, what is that one message you would like to share with the CEOs and owners of legal firms that are watching us today? What should they be thinking about acting or preparing for right now?
I think your job as a CEO or a managing partner is not about, meeting, a specific financial plan that you laid out for this year. Yes, of course, again, you need to eat, you need to live. It's important. But I think those managing partners and CEOs that will be remembered for their vision 10 years from now are the ones that dare to allocate sufficient time to legal teams to really embrace this technology, because that will make your firm be competitive and be, really stand out in a couple of years from now. I don't even think it's going to be 10 years, frankly. So
yeah,
it's going to be sooner. So dare to do that, because the alternative is that you won't do it, and you will have such a competitive disadvantage towards the ones that do. And I think if you're a strategic person, the decision should be very easy to make. So that's the advice I want to give. Carve out a percentage of time across all the seniority of your firm, and learn. Go on that curiosity and learning journey, and then set clear outcomes, what you want to get for it, and test each time again if you're getting there with all the learning.
You guys heard right here from Rick. You really got to embrace what is coming for you. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much, Rick. It has been completely a fantastic, phenomenal discussion. Thank you for accepting the challenge to exercise your foresight and to look into the future in this Tech Foresight podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana.
And for you, my friends, if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a comment on LinkedIn or YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major podcast platforms, wherever you like it to tune it in. So join the discussion, connect with us on social media, and let us know your thoughts. So what is your take for today, and what do you believe that is going to happen? Do you think that AI is going to disrupt or elevate the legal work? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We really want to hear from you. I am Diana Daniels, and I'll see you next time as we continue exploring how technology is reshaping industries and the future of work. Until then, please stay ahead, stay curious, and most of all, stay foresighted. See you soon. Thank you very much.